Okay, connect distant. So badly. Maybe it's too early yet. Maybe the problem is it's too early. This is it doesn't start till 7:30. Well, that could be a problem, right? Come on. I'm not gonna be able to log into this. What's the Gmail address? Be able to watch this. I'm really disappointed. Not going. Be able to watch it. I am so fucking disappointed. Be able to watch it. What's the password for our email? Will not be able to watch it. Be able to watch this. Be able to watch it. It's going to tell me your shit's wrong, and it's not. Then three participles. That's ridiculous. Mhm. I'm gonna get to watch this. I look forward to this all fucking day. It's been Tell me it's wrong. It's going to tell me it's wrong. I already know this. It's going to tell me it's wrong. Well, so we're not going to be able to watch this. I thought we was going to be sitting home watching this. Look at all the people that's logged in right there. There's 24 people logged in. Does it start in 20 minutes? No. It starts now. Is that the problem, that it hasn't started yet? Oh, it says it starts at 7:30. Maybe that's the problem. It's not 7:30. It's too early yet. I think maybe it's not started yet. I'm gonna give up yet. Maybe it doesn't start until 7:30. There's a Are they? Me, the host, and John Gerwin. My internet connection is not unstable. I'm wondering if the problem is it doesn't start until 7:30. Is that the problem? think that's right. Oh, it doesn't start till 7:30. That might be the problem. I think that could be the problem. So that gives me 15 minutes to get you into some nighttime underpants. You got your lower teeth hanging out. I can't do nothing. I'm gonna get, well, I might have to go to Raleigh Radiology. We have to get crazy early. I can't leave you home alone, obviously. Hmm. People are starting to log in. It just said it's too early. I think that's all that's wrong.
Hey, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, if you do, then I'm on. This is amazing. It worked. All right, we'll get started in a minute. Thank you.
Balls dig an asshole on the toilet, please. Oh, he's muted me. Okay. Talking, but I can't.
All right, thanks. I'll do that, Royce. Also, I'll try to remember to share the screen. I usually forget, but we're talking about it now, so hopefully I'll remember. You can holler at me if I forget. Also, when we get going, we'll minimize the Zoom thing. I just have to remember the little dots up above. All right, we're ready to get going. Hey, everyone, we're going to have Matt introduce some minutes and things, and also if you want, Kevin. Okay, everybody, it is 7:35, and we'll go ahead and get started now. Louise is finally here. There's a couple of things up front, there's a couple of things over you can drag over, or you can sit on the floor, sit on Louise's lap. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Matt. He's going to make some announcements and do the usual stuff.
All right, so my name is Matt. For those who don't know, I'm one of the board members here and also the volunteer coordinator. Well, welcome to our monthly May meeting. So Louise, you want to go ahead and say your bit?
Sure. This is a form of any day. It's your first time here and you're interested in joining like Audubon with sponsors or membership the first year. It's normally $20 a year, but like Audubon will pay for your membership for the first year if you're interested. If anybody wants a form, let me know. And for some,
Yes, see Louise.
oh, you
All right, so a few announcements to go through here. So Advocacy Day is Wednesday, June 3rd from 8 to 5. This is when we members talk with our lawmakers and ask them to support bird-friendly legislation. So that is coming up. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Spending time in nature with birds and listening to birdsong is a proven remedy for stress. As always, we invite you to join us on any of our weekly outings for a nature timeout with our friendly guides and others seeking to be in the moment in nature too. And you may also be aware of our Birding for Wellbeing outings. If not, this new program, co-founded with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, Wake County, offers birding outings with a slower pace and heightened focus on mindfulness and social connection. And this month's meeting is on the, I should know because I'm leading it, but it is on the 23rd. So it'll be on the 23rd at Shank Forest. And you can find that information on the meetup. Okay. Local TV station ABC 11 has taken keen interest in birding for well-being. And excitingly, last week, board director in equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging co-chair Rick LaRose recorded a segment with NAMI Wake County Executive Director Mark Simon for ABC 11's Together Perspectives show that aired this past Sunday. And for those at home, we'll post the link in chat and it'll have a link. And then for those in the room, we'll share the link via our social channels, Facebook and Instagram later this week. And then also, there's free loaner backpacks and seasonal birding at Braswell Memorial Public Library in Rocky Mount. May 16th, there's a bird outing at Battle Park, see meetup, followed by talks in the library from 1 to 4 p.m. So if anybody's out in Rocky Mountain and wants to attend that, we got that going on. There is also an invasive plant removal this Thursday from 9 to 11 at Carol Howard Johnson Environmental Education Park in Fuquay. And you can sign up on Meetup or you can reach out to Jim. Jim, go ahead and raise your hand. There he is, way in the back there. And speaking of plants, there is a native plant swap we are having at the White Deer Park Nature Center on June 20th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. You can register through the town of Garner or contact Colleen for more details. And there's also a petition ongoing now in support of the 24,000 tree initiative. You can find more information on the NC Audubon website. And Marbles IMAX in downtown Raleigh is excited to share Conservative Convos, Something to Howl About, a 3-part speaker series that showcases IMAX's brand new documentary, Lost Wolves of Yellowstone, and local experts in wolf conservation efforts happening in North Carolina. And there's a few dates coming up. So today, from 6 to 7:30 p.m., they're doing having Kim Wheeler, the executive director of the Red Roof Coalition, speak there, as well as Wednesday, the 24th of June at 6 p.m. Dr. Tara Harrison, NC State University professor of zoological and exotic animal medicine, will be speaking. And then Tuesday, August 25th at 6 p.m., the speaker has yet to be announced. And John has some announcements for June.
Actually, real brief, and I'll follow up after this speaker, but just know that June program will do something that's insect pollinator stuff. I'll say more again afterwards. That's June 9th. The same people helping me do that are going to help me lead a field trip on the 13th out in the Uaris. We'll get that on the website. Also, there's the Purple Martin banding that I do with the nestlings. Anybody can come and watch. And right now, the Prairie Ridge is way off track. The birds just got here. So that'll probably be July. But the other sites, Yates Mill and University Club, they're closer to on schedule, maybe a little early. I'm just guessing right now, maybe between the 5th and the 15th of June. But Courtney is keeping me posted. So again, just watch the website for when she'll know more in a week or two about how the nesting is progressing. The babies have to be within a certain age range for me to harass them. So again, that's just kind of her reading of the tea leaves this morning when she sent me a note. They might be hatching next week, some of them. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll say a few more words about June after we're finished. Welcome everybody. Have a seat. We can get on more of these great seats too if you want. Do we have anything? Does anybody else have any other announcements? No? John, anything?
Well, I just might follow up on the Purple Martins. We're expecting some hatchings this week. We'll see tomorrow at the University Club. But we also have some Columbia University that PhD candidates down here working with our Purple Martin.
Right.
I think because of the years of us, Courtney, forcing us to take these meticulous notes about all of our birds, that data all submitted nationally into a database. Columbia, whose students picked us as one of the sites,
Right.
actually studied the nestlings. And if you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is they're going to put some satellite transmitter backpacks on some of the nestlings.
There'll be Modus tags, but not satellites. Yeah. So John was pointing out that there's a graduate student here. She's actually living with my wife and I. She's in our basement, and but it's okay. It's a finished basement, but it's like a little Purple Martin gourd. They're here to study Purple Martins, and they are going to be. They'll be doing a lot of things. Putting some tracking devices, the Modus tags on some Purple Martins. They will be taking blood to do some chemistry work. They will be swapping some eggs with a colony in Connecticut. A big part of the study is to see what is inherited by young from the migratory behavior. The birds that they take from here and go to Connecticut, where will they end up? They can track those with these Modus tags, and they're going to bring some Connecticut birds here and swap, do a little child swapping with the birds. And so we have been doing all this stuff with Courtney, John and I, and Courtney working together with getting all the data for years, and they put out the word to the Purple Martin Conservation Association. Courtney let them know we have. So they were pretty excited. The student's name is Shasta. Actually, her last name is Corvus, and she's living on Ravenwood with us. I thought that was pretty interesting. She's looking for a couple more colonies, so yeah, we know Susan Campbell used to band Martins with us. She knows people in Durham, and we know people in the Sandhills. Gabriella, we can hook her up with more. I don't know if any of it's like something you can watch, but really it's just um, they're doing some pretty serious stuff. It's a big grant from NSF, National Science Foundation.
They will be doing, or at least they're willing to do a public day
Yeah.
when they're doing some of their work. So we'll probably just look for that when it will be scheduled, probably in June as well.
And I'm going to try to get them to do a program here at the museum, like down at the Daily Planet Theater on a Saturday or something. Shasta is totally up for it. That'll be on the museum website, probably talking about what they're doing. So, all right, yeah. I guess that's it. Let me say a few words about our speaker tonight, then. Because Steve and I have known each other for 28 years. Yeah, I love saying that now. All those years, though. He was at the University of North Carolina down in Wilmington. So, Dr. Steve Emslie is a professor of marine, or he's the marine ornithologist. He's professor in the Department of Biology and Marine Biology in UNC Wilmington. He studies not only living seabirds, but also fossil record of birds and paleoecology. He first went to Antarctica in 1991 to help with penguin and skua research at King George Island, and then began developing his own research program, especially on the Adelie penguin. He uses a variety of interdisciplinary techniques. So he and his students have been investigating the ecology and the diet of these penguins, past and present, and the impact of climate change. They sample well-preserved, often mummified remains from the cold, dry Antarctic environment. These range in age from hundreds to thousands of years old. He also has designed and teaches an undergraduate course on Antarctica, which is Antarctica Ecology, Geology, History, and Policy. And with his students, they've developed some K-12 curricula on polar studies. And these are available on his website, along with blogs from his previous research trips. And we might have to post this. It's www.uncw.edu/penguins. And that's the University of, what did we say? Carolina. I'm losing my train of thought there. I just always say UNCW. So some other things. He began his career in archaeology. That's where he got his BA and master's in Master of Arts at the University of Colorado. As he became interested in biology, completed an MS in biological sciences at Northern Arizona University. You just hired somebody from Northern Arizona. The connection there. A new professor is joining Steve in biology. He's an ornithologist. Steve's PhD at the University of Florida focused on the fossil record of birds, especially condors in North America. Oh, wow. And he began working on living seabirds after completing this degree. So his research on penguins combines archaeological, paleontological backgrounds to investigate these species and how they've responded to climate change over millennia. He loves working in the field, loves teaching classes, and as he says, he never wants to retire. Well, we're glad. We're glad he's here. So please welcome Dr. Steve Emslie.
Maybe go.
I'm going to turn out.
And I want to share the screen too. Do we need to share the screen? Share the screen? Do we need to do that?
We got to share the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Thank you. Well, go there. And I know we can hide this.
That's okay.
How do we do that?
It's not on that big screen.
Yeah. Oh, it's not? Oh, there we go.
And mine on this screen.
Okay.
That too dark? Is that good? Well, all right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I love talking about penguins, so this is perfect. And as John said, I've been going to the Antarctic since 1991, so I've seen a lot of changes down there. And I've developed my research program, and it's grown over the years with new technology that we can use too to expand on the studies that I've been doing. And just to start out, a brief introduction of the Antarctic. How many here have been to the Antarctic on a tour ship? Or a couple of you have into the peninsula, Antarctic Peninsula, is that everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, right up there. So yeah, King George Island is right there. That's where I started my career in the Antarctic. And that's where most tour ships go today, to that region, because it's the easiest part of the Antarctic to get to across from Terra del Fuego here into the Antarctic Peninsula. So a lot of tour ships go in there. And when I was in 91, there was less than 5,000 tourists overall that went to the Antarctic that year. And last year there was 120,000 that went to the Antarctic. And most of that is in the peninsula. I've been working more in the Ross Sea now down here, and there's a couple of tour ships that go in there, and I'll talk about those more here in a minute. But that just gives an idea of the scale of this area and how huge the Antarctic is. And I like to tell my students that there's really two Antarcticas. There's the West Antarctic, and over here, especially up here, it's very different than the rest of the Antarctic because this part juts up above the polar circle, and so it's a milder climate. A little warmer. There's more rainfall there in the northern peninsula than in the rest of Antarctica. And the only two flowering plants that are found in the Antarctic are up there. There's more wildlife, just a richer area in that regard. But down here, it's cold and dry. And so there's a really good preservation in these sites I'm going to show you. And that's why I like to work in that area more. I've got a longer time record there for the Adelie penguin. And so just a little bit in general about penguins, and I've got, John brought one from the collections here, a Adelie penguin, which you see here in this picture. But there are about 18 species, depending on who you talk to. There's splitters and lumpers on penguin species. But the fossil record shows that they showed up in New Zealand around 62 million years ago. So they have a really long fossil record. And that fossil, 62 million year old fossil, looks pretty much like a modern penguin. So they have had a successful morphology in the marine environment for millions and millions of years. They're all in the southern hemisphere, and they use their wings as flippers. They're all flightless, and tail is a rudder, and propulse themselves in the water that way. And this is a crude map, but it shows where the distribution of penguins are, some of the 18 species. And you can see that there's really only 5 that occur in Antarctica. 3 are shown here. The Pygosella penguins, the Gentoo, Adelie, and Chinstrap. But the Adelie is endemic. It only breeds in the Antarctic. It's only found south of the polar circle. And these 2 species just get into the Antarctic right here in the peninsula. They've been expanding southward with the warming trends in recent decades, and they are more sub-Antarctic in their distribution. And then you see other species are in South America, all the way up to the Galapagos. They're South Africa. They're on sub-Antarctic islands. And the other 2 species that are missing here on that map that occur in the Antarctic. Oh, this thing. Look a little better. Yeah, I'll do this. The emperor penguin, of course. Emperor and the Adelie penguin are the 2 endemic species of penguins that you won't find anywhere else except in the Antarctic, except for strays that sometimes come out of the Antarctic and end up in New Zealand or someplace. In fact, there was an emperor in Australia last year. It showed up on a beach. And then the other 3 species are visitors that are coming into the Antarctic Peninsula from the sub-Antarctic and expanding southward. The macaroni penguin is fairly rare. It's more in the sub-Antarctic and not so much in the Antarctic, except in rare spots in the Antarctic Peninsula. So that's the distribution of these penguins. And here's another view showing the Pygosella penguins. And the Adelie, again, is all the circles there. And it is found all around the continent. It's a circumantarctic as long with the emperor penguin. It's also circumantarctic. The difference being, though, the Adelie nests on land and the emperor nests on ice. The Gentoo and Chinstrap, then you can see their colonies are located around these areas here, and they all overlap in this area where I first started to work in the Antarctic in the early 90s. So I want to talk a little bit about the emperor penguin, and I've never worked directly on the emperor penguin because they nest in winter, and I work mainly in the summer down there. And you have to stay in a station over winter to work on these. But I have a colleague, Gary Miller, who worked on emperors one season out of the French station, and I got a number of photos from him about this. But they're our largest penguin, about 1.2 meters high, 40 kilograms weight. That's about like 80 or 90 pounds. And they have a diet of fish, squid, and krill. And they start nesting in the winter. They come back to the colonies in the autumn. In the Antarctic, the autumn is in April and March and April. And they come back to their colonies at that time. And then the winter down there, of course, is our summer. So, and they're breeding in the middle of their winter, which is extreme environment for that area. So it's amazing how they can do this. But they have such a large bird, and they take such a long time to produce an egg and raise a chick. They have to start breeding in the winter so that chick hatches and is ready to go to sea for the first time in the Antarctic summer when there's lots of food. So that's why they have to start their cycle so soon. And I'll just go over that cycle a little bit here. Every winter, sea ice forms around Antarctica, and it can often double the size of the continent, though there's been a lot less sea ice the last couple of years. But when that sea ice forms, the emperor penguins, they've finished molting and they're finished their breeding season. They come out to the ice edge. And then when the winter is coming on and they need to go back to their colonies, they walk across the sea ice. So we hear about emperor penguins walking hundreds of miles or over 100 miles. It's because they have all that sea ice to cross to get to the edge of the continent. And there they will set up their colonies on ice, sea ice that's called fast ice because it's attached to land. And they'll have their colony there. Why do they do that? Why don't they just nest out here? Because this ice melts back quickly in the summer and in the fall, or I mean in the spring and summer. And so if they were out here, then they lose everything with the sea ice breaking up. So right here, they're safe for 6 months or so while they produce their eggs and raise their chicks. And then the ice breaks up back to there, and the chicks can go to sea easily after that. So those are the reasons why they do these things and how they've adapted to doing this. Here's a colony that's right at the edge of the continent. And you can see it's got a lot of big chicks here, downy chicks, and some adults sitting around here. So this is late in the breeding cycle. And as soon as those chicks molt into true feathers, they'll be able to go to sea. And that will be the next step here. Overall, their breeding takes about 9 to 10 months, the whole breeding cycle. So it's pretty long. And this one diagram shows how that breeding cycle works. March to April, they're coming back to their colonies across all that sea ice to the edge of the continent. They have mating there. This is the only X-rated part of the show, so right there. And then the female takes a month to produce the egg after copulation. So they're just standing around waiting for the egg to be laid. And they don't go back to sea because it's 100 miles away. So they're standing there fasting and waiting. And then as soon as the female lays that egg, she's used a lot of energy to produce that egg. It's one big large egg. And the male takes it on his feet and starts to incubate it while she leaves and goes back to sea to replenish her energy. And so that's what's shown next here. The females go off to feed. And then it takes 2 months of incubation to hatch that chick. So the male is sitting there in the coldest part of the year in the Antarctic, coldest place on the planet, and is fasting and incubating this egg until it hatches. And as soon as it hatches in August, that chick is fed some oils from the stomach of the penguin and produce these energy-rich oils, and that's all it can give it at that time. But the female, with good timing, returns right about that time, and she's got a belly full of fish and squid and krill, and so she can feed the chicks some real food at that time. And so the male will reluctantly give up the chick, and then he'll go to sea. He's been fasting for 115 days. Can you imagine? It's a long time fast. And then he comes back, and they trade off, and they do this for about 6 more times. The chicks form a creche, these groups called a creche, And they huddle together when they're independent from their parents. And then they're both being fed, the both parents are feeding the chicks. And then finally, in December, the ice is breaking up, the chicks have their feathers, they fledge and go to sea for the first time. And they don't have parents go with them, they just instinctively know where to go to forage and how to forage. And that's how their cycle works. How do they do all this? Provide this. These are some of the photos from my friend Gary. And three things: fat, feathers, and behavior allow them to adapt to these conditions. So when they first come back to the colony, fresh in the autumn, and come across that sea ice, then they're pretty fat. And they have also very thick skin and very thick layers of feathers. They have several layers of feathers, different sizes underneath that surface layer. And when they're too hot, they can, when they're too cold, they can fluff them up and let air in there, and that has insulation to it. So that's what these guys are doing right there. And so that helps them fast and last through that first part of the year when they need to do that. So fat, feathers, and then behavior. And behavior, when they're in a group like this, these are all males with an egg, each one with an egg on their feet. And it's the dark winter and it's cold, winds coming in maybe 50 knots, 100 knots. And so there's one side that's exposed to the wind and another side that's on the lee side. And the ones that's on the exposed side are getting the worst of it. They're getting more energy zapped from them. So eventually they say, I've had enough of that. And it turns around and comes out and walks around the other side, the lee side. And then the next line of penguins take over as being that front. And so they switch off like that. And so the whole colony actually moves because they're carrying the eggs with them on their feet. And the colony is just moving around the sea ice in this manner to maintain that behavior. They have a brood pad on their lower abdomen. And of course, that is so they can put the egg directly against their skin in incubation and transfer heat that way, because those thick layer feathers wouldn't transfer heat through them. So to keep the egg incubating, they have to have that. And then they have these large feet, so the eggs will sit there. And here's a picture of that. There's the egg in there against the brood patch. Kind of rock back and lock their ankles, and they can stand like that for hours and hours, days and days while they incubate. Chick hatches, and it fits under the penguin for a while. And then, so this might be the female by now who's taking over, and then wait for the male to come back. And they grow pretty fast with a really rich food that they can feed them from the sea. And they try to stay under there as long as they can. And eventually they get too big. And by then, though, the sun's out, summer's coming on, and the chicks can stand comfortably next to their parent. And they don't have two chicks, so this is a chick from another parent here. They're just huddling together that little bit. But now they got those downy feathers to keep them warm. And then here's a creche. You can see they really huddle up when they need to. And eventually they get their feathers and go to sea. And the parents, when they're done breeding, they go back to sea too. They regain energy, and then they have to molt. All birds molt, So penguins do a catastrophic molt, where they'll drop all their feathers at once and replace all their feathers at the same time. And they're not standing there naked on the ice when they do this. What's happening is that the old feathers are getting pushed out by newly growing feathers. And so they look really ragged, and you can see feathers lying on the ice floe here. It takes them about 4 weeks to do this. They don't go into sea doing that, so it's another period of fasting. And so they fast again doing this. And then when they're done with that, they go out to the ice edge, feed, and in a month or two later, start all over again. So pretty amazing life they have there. Now that's their current situation, how the breeding cycle goes. There's about 600,000 emperor penguins left in the Antarctic, and about 45 colonies. And there's now threats because of the warming to that sea ice stability that they walk so far to get to. And in this study that was done by Fretwell from the British in 2023, they studied 5 colonies using satellite imagery, and this red here is a sea ice anomaly. There's less sea ice than normal in that area in front of these colonies. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colonies. Of these 5 colonies, as it was getting close to the time for the chicks to start growing real feathers and fledge, the sea ice blew out because they were exposed to the winds and the storms and the storm surges. And so those colonies were lost. The chicks couldn't be fed anymore. They were on the sea ice and broke up and they were gone and didn't have the real feathers to insulate them. Only one of these colonies survived. It was this one over here that's in a little inlet. So it was protected from the winds and that one made it. But this is not the first time this has happened. So these kinds of things are starting to occur. There's a lot of concern about the emperor penguin's future and that it may be going extinct in the next 100 years or so, maybe sooner. This one article said 20% reduction by 2100. Though things seem to be speeding up down there, so it may be a conservative estimate. But there are emperor penguins that nest on land. There are 2 colonies where they've done this. So if they could alter their behavior and nest more on land in the future, they might be hope for them. They might survive and do it that way. So time will tell, but the emperor is now considered an endangered species in the Antarctic. Let's go to the Adelie penguin next, and it's much more numerous. There's about 6 or 7 million breeding pair of Adelie penguins found all around the continent, and all these circles again, and they nest on land. And because of that, they leave a record of their past breeding. Emperor penguins being on sea ice leave no record as that ice melts away. But Adelie penguins do. And so I've been concentrating my work on them. It's a true ice adapted species. It feeds around pack ice, it remains in Antarctica year round, and like most seabirds, they'll mate for life with the same pair. They'll come back to the exact same nest site every year and rebuild it. And they use pebbles to make those nests because there's no vegetation. And year after year, they rebuild these nests. And so the pebbles and the sediments all build up into these big mounds, and they're like archaeological sites full of remains of penguins from the past, chicks that died, eggshell, food remains. It's amazing. So that's what interested me. And when I first went to the Antarctic with my archaeological background, actually, I thought of this project because I wanted to go back to the Antarctic and I wanted to find a way I could do that. So I developed this project and started getting my own grants, and that worked out great. I'm still doing it today. Here's a nest, a well-built couple nest that keeps the eggs contained, keeps them from rolling away, keeps them off meltwater that might freeze and kill the eggs. And so that's why there's so much buildup of these pebbles over time. And just a little bit on their breeding cycle, it's a little bit the same as the emperor, just shorter. So they do their entire breeding within the 2 to 3 months of the Antarctic summer. And so they mate for life. And so the female lays 2 eggs and uses up all of her energy to produce those 2 eggs. She goes to sea, and the male fasts and incubates for about 4 weeks while she recovers. And then she'll come back and they'll trade off every couple of weeks until the chicks hatch. And there's a male that's been fasting on the nest waiting for the female to return. Here's a female, and she's clean and fat and ready to get back on the eggs there. They do this greeting call, so they recognize each other's voice, and the chicks the same way. So they can tell, even though all these penguins sound the same to us, they can tell each other apart based on a little change in notes that they can pick up that we can't. The chicks are brooded for a few days after they hatch, but they also grow quickly. And while they're after hatching, the parents now are coming in and out of the colonies constantly, day and night. So this is a penguin highway. And so you'll see this activity. They're coming in and out, going up this way, going all these nests, all of these hillsides. This is actually a chinstrap penguin colony, but that's a pretty good example of a penguin highway that you see in the summer. Here's another one that's obvious from the snow. They have all these trails going up and down to the colonies. This is actually a crozier in the Ross Sea of Adelie penguins. And sometimes when they're coming back to their nest, even though they don't need it, they'll come back. They've got a full belly. Here you can see it's wet. It's got a full belly of krill. It picks up a pebble. It says, oh, okay, I'm just going to grab that pebble and bring it up too. And this is kind of an innate behavior. They want to do that. They come up and give it to their mate on the nest, even though it's not really needed. It's really fun to watch these guys all the time. They feed their chicks by direct regurgitation into their mouth because otherwise flying birds like skuas will steal the prey off the ground if they were to regurgitate on the ground, like some birds do. And they eat mainly krill. So krill is the keystone species in the marine environment in the Antarctic. Seals, whales, and penguins all feed on krill. It's very important. But krill needs sea ice to be abundant as well. So krill populations are declining because of sea ice declines. And that's a concern for the future. But right now, there are some areas of the Antarctic where the adelies are doing quite well. And so here's two good parents that probably raised chicks together before. And the longer they stay as a breeding pair, the better they are at raising young and more successful they are at reproduction. And so this chick you see is well fed. It's got a lot of food in its gullet there too. It's got really good parents. But that's nothing compared to this. This chick can't even move, it's so full. But this is good. This means good parents, lots of food. The chicks have to leave the colony at a heavy weight to survive their first winter. And studies have found that if they leave the colony at less than 3,000 grams in weight, they'll never see them again. But if they're over that, then they have a really good chance of surviving. And that's what the data show. So good parents, fat chicks, good survivorship. Here are chicks now molting in the creche where this one's losing its down here. We call this one the Beethoven look. And then here's one still a little bit behind on shedding its down. But they can get really hot too on a sunny day. So that down is so insulated, they just lie down on the ground and spread their flippers out and don't move. So you can see that a lot too. And then the parents come in to feed the chick. And once they feed the chick doesn't give up, it wants more. So it keeps chasing the parents. You can watch them chase the parent around, trying to get it to regurgitate more food. There it goes again. Here it comes again. And the poor parent is so harassed, it finally goes down to the beach to get away. But I think it might be intentional to do this because what that parent is doing is building up the leg muscles of that chick. The chicks flap their wings all the time and build up those muscles, but this running probably really helps getting their leg muscles going too. After about 8 weeks of feeding the chicks gather down on the beach in a creche like this, and they all have their feathers now. They're all looking out to sea, wanting to go. They know they need to go. Maybe their parents aren't feeding them anymore, so they get hungry. And they're just excited about going. But they're a little frightened about it. And they don't go all the time. Sometimes they go down the water's edge and then run back. Well, in this particular creche, one of them said, heck with it, I'm going. That guy right there. And so the rest of them go, okay, let's go. And they all go out into the water. And at first they try to swim on the surface, but they're heavy bodied and they start to panic, they're flapping around and they sink. And then they realize when they get underwater that they could move better underwater and use their flippers for propulsion. So that's a little panic stage there at first, and then they're fine. When you look at these colonies over time, so here's a pebble concentration. And if you have adults in here that are getting plenty of food out here, feeding those chicks so they are over 3,000 grams and surviving and coming back, this colony will probably grow because the chicks usually come back to the same colony where they were hatched or nearby. So this colony will grow. But if they're not getting enough food out there or some other factors are changing things and the chicks are not surviving, then as the adults die off, this colony shrinks and eventually it disappears and becomes an abandoned colony. That's right here. So it's a pebble mound that stands out on the landscape because of the sort of pebbles that they used in their nests. And you can see other ones back here. There's a whole series of abandoned colonies here. And this is what I got interested in looking at these and when they were occupied, what it meant about the marine environment in the past, what the occupation history was of the penguins with climate change, and so on. So my initial studies were on those factors. And they leave this archive, this record in there as well, that I'll show you here in a second. So they're good indicators of the marine environment because first of all, they need ice-free terrain to breed. So here's a beach and there's an active penguin colony right here. And so you can see the pink from the guano, pinkish color from the krill they eat. They need ice-free terrain. They need open water on this beach to get in and out to feed their chicks. And they need food out here that's at a reasonable distance from the colony so they can feed those chicks every day while they're growing, and they can get to a heavy weight and survive. So if any of those factors change, then that will change that colony's history. There's some abandoned mounds out here, these dark mounds, and let's say they're 1,000 years old. That means 1,000 years ago, we had all these conditions of open water and plenty of food. So that's how they're indicator species of the past in marine environments as well as current. And you find a lot of bones preserved on the surface of these colonies. So these are all chick bones because chicks mainly die at these sites. And so they're recorded there. And if you do an excavation into the mound, you see that it's all pebbles with this reddish colored soil. It has its own name, ornithologist or bird form soil. And that is pretty abundant in the Antarctic. There's some of this in the Arctic too, with seabirds there, but most of it is in the Antarctic. And if you see the change in color right here in the texture, it's mostly gravels, beach gravels or glacial gravels here. And the color change right there is pretty distinct and sharp. So this is when the penguins first arrived and started to breed there. And if you find organic remains, you can radiocarbon date from that point there all the way up. It gives you the time when they occupied the site for the first time, how long they were there, and when they abandoned it. So you get this whole history just from radiocarbon dating. And here's a dry soil in the Ross Sea that's kind of the same. It's got the reddish color, pebbles, find eggshell fragments in there. It's all preserved really well. And then excavate these like an archaeologist. So we put it in a pit and we excavate in 5 centimeter levels and go down, screening everything. This is a wet area. This is in the peninsula, so it was not dry like in the Ross Sea. So we have to water screen it, but we get all the organic remains recovered by having 3 size mesh screens stacked up on each other with a 1/4 inch on top to get the pebbles out, and then a window screen to get some of the gravel and bones there, and then an even finer screen below that to capture fish bones, fish otoliths, which are the ear bones of fish. They can be identified to species, squid beaks, all these things will be preserved in that fine sediment. So it's you just sort through it and you find all this stuff. Here's a screen full of chick bones, and squid beaks are in there too. So this excellent preservation in these soils is I call it a biological archive of paleohistorical information. Food remains, as well as the penguin remains that are preserved there. And sometimes, especially in the Ross Sea, where it's so cold and dry, you get mummies, and mummification occurs. And you can get open air mummification on the surface too, where you can find a mummy like this that could be 800 years old just lying on the surface. It's amazing. And you find seal mummies in the Antarctic too, in the dry valley. So they can be hundreds to thousands of years old and still it's pretty much intact. This particular mummy here is about 300 years old. Came from a site in the southern Ross Sea, the most southerly penguin colony in Antarctica. So in the summary here, what you can find is the bones, feathers, mummies, eggshells, fish bones, otoliths, squid beaks, all these things preserved in that biological archive. And the analyses, I've talked about radiocarbon dating, so with the occupation history. We can also do ancient DNA with these remains that are so well preserved. I do a lot of stable isotope analyses because stable isotopes of carbon and nitrogen tell you something about their diet in the past. Oxygen isotopes can tell you something about climate change. And now, most recently, starting a couple of years ago, there's a lab in Germany that wanted to look at my mummies to see if they could recover any RNA viruses from them, because they rarely preserve anywhere else. And sure enough, they did find some. And we've got a paper submitted now on that because it is so unusual to find these viruses going back in time to see how they've evolved. These viruses are related to the COVID viruses. So this is kind of besides just pure research, it's more of an applied research now that we can use some of these specimens for and get more information on how these viruses evolve. So that's an ongoing project now that's developed most recently. The Ross Sea area has the longest record for Adelie penguins. It goes back over 45,000 years, and we've got mummies that old too in the Ross Sea. That's how good the preservation is. And so the Adelie penguin has this. It's a unique seabird because it's probably the only seabird in the world that has such a long record of its past in the same place where it still occurs today. So you can learn all about this in the present and the past, and then help predict what's going to happen in the future. And so what I've been able to do with the occupation history, I'll just run through a few examples here. This is where current colonies are located in the Ross Sea. Now this map is going to the south. It's this part right here, shown and blown up to the right. And so Cape Adair is the entrance to the Ross Sea, and it goes all the way down here to Ross Island and the Ross Ice Shelf right here, largest ice shelf in the world. And Ross Island is where McMurdo Station is located, the largest research station, the U.S. station in Antarctica, which has about 1,500 people in summer. So it's like a small town. And so the lot of support for logistics comes out of McMurdo. There's also this Italians have a station here in Terranova Bay. And now the Koreans have a station here there too, and the Chinese. So there's a lot of studies going on in the Ross Sea now, which is good because it's a marine protected area. And that's about a third of all Adelie penguins in Antarctica breed in this region. So it's a really important region. And the Ross Sea is one of the last pristine oceans left in the world. This is what the Ross Ice Shelf looks like. It's about 90 meters high. That's right, 90 meters high, and then about 3 or 4 times that below the water. So it's an ice shelf is just where all these glaciers come down off the coast into the sea and merge together and form this one big floating ice shelf. And then that ice shelf can actually move forward or backward with climate change over geologic time. And in the last ice age, that ice shelf moved from here all the way out to here. That last glacial maximum grounding line at about 18,000, 20,000 years ago. That ice shelf was all the way out to here. And then it started to go back. By 7,600 years ago, it was here. This is what geologists have found. And now it's back to here. So when it moved forward during that ice age, it pushed all the penguins out. All the Adelie penguins were pushed out of the Ross Sea, and there's no record of them during that time. There is a little bit of a record of Adelie penguins in the Ross Sea before it started moving forward. So we've got some really ancient remains back then. But the most recent record shows how they reoccupied the Ross Sea with this retreating line of this ice shelf. So beginning about 7,000, 4,000 years ago, this is the only Adelie penguin sites we know of that were being occupied at that time. And the ice shelf was back to here, and these sites back here were more on the 4,000-year period as that ice shelf continued to retreat back. So open water allowed the penguins to come back in. And Polynya, by the way, that's an area of open water surrounded by sea ice. And it's a very rich area. So most penguin colonies are associated with Polynyas in the Antarctic. So good foraging grounds there for penguins. So we know they were there at that time. And then the next period is called the penguin optimum because it was a warmer period between 4,000 and 2,000 years ago. And we have penguins nesting all up and down this coast right here, where they do not occur today. And so there's open water. They got in there. There's on this Franklin Island right here, Ross Island up here, and but nothing out here. And the largest penguin colony today is still not occupied. It's right there at Cape Crozier, and there's another one at Cape Adair down here. That pointer's kind of dying on me, but it's right there, Cape Adair, where that has also over 300,000 penguin nests today, but wasn't occupied yet at this time. So these colonies are not very old at all. In other words, today's colonies most of them are less than 500 years old. That's how quickly they change. Speaking of Cape Adair, again, just all the way down here at this point right here at the end of the Ross Sea, it's an historic spot too. It's where the first people overwintered in 1889 or 1899 to 1900. So there's a historic hut there still from that overwinter. But this is what the beach looks like. And it's a large triangular beach. And you can see that it's low to sea level. It's got a lot of water from storm surges in the middle here. And it's got all these ridges that go across. And you see everything is pinkish color because it's all penguins. This is a huge penguin colony, over 338,000 nesting pair. So huge. And they're even coming up this slope here. The beach got filled in, but they're nesting up this slope here, which goes up 300 meters to an upper terrace. And they're right on the edge of that terrace. And these lines, you see these mounds that look like a geologic feature, they're not. They're penguin formed mounds that they built up over time and using this site. So I wanted to study this site for a long time, and I finally got out there a few times. It's currently one of the largest adult penguin colonies in Antarctica. Pretty impressive. Those are a lot of chicks there too. So this is peak summer, but you can see how massive it is. And when I first went here, I wanted to sample the paleohistory and get the oldest records and how long they've been nesting here. But you look at that and it's overwhelming. Where do you go to sample a site like this? So I started walking down one of those ridges, and I was trying to figure out how I'm going to sample, because that sediment is really thick. It would take a long time to dig down into it and try to get old bones. And so as I went down one of these long mounds, I lucked out and found a place where it had been a cross section had been eroded away and exposed the whole layer of ornithogenic soil. See all the pebbles and the pink color? That's all ornithogenic soil. That shows right there that those mounds are all penguin formed. And down here at the bottom, you have these volcanic sands, real dark volcanic sands. So there's that break where they first started to occupy this colony, and then over a meter of sediments above that. So they've been there a while. And when I looked at the dates at this bottom here, I got dates around 2,000 years ago, and then all the way up to the present. So this site's been continuously occupied for the last 2,000 years, one of the older ones in the Ross Sea. And not only that, if you look at looking up the beach again from the other side, and here's that terrace, all that light color, that's all pink colored penguin nests there on these steep slopes. It's amazing how they can do this. But these are adult penguin nests up there on these steep slopes. So they're not only crossing this beach and going through the gauntlet of other nests and getting attacked by other birds while they do that, they're climbing up to 300 meters above sea level to the top of this terrace to form a nest. And fortunately, there's already pebbles up there, so I don't think they're carrying the pebbles up there, but they still have to go back and forth to feed their chicks. And okay, now the next photo, we're going to go up on top and look back this direction. And here's that edge of the terrace above the beach right there. So there's active colonies there. But there's this large area up there that's covered with old penguin mounds. And I started testing some of these. And it looks like this area up there was once occupied at the same time as the lower beach. In other words, this largest colony in the Antarctic was once twice as large as it is today. So that's pretty amazing. And if you look at the satellite image, here's that lower beach, Triangular Beach. Here's the edge of that terrace. And radiocarbon dates show that lower beach was occupied first 2,000 years ago. When that filled in, they moved up to the upper terrace by 1,600 years ago. And then they moved even farther out there, about a kilometer from that edge, 1,100 years ago. And then it all collapsed back down to what it is today. But it's still the largest colony. So they were walking all across this beach, climbing 300 meters and walking another kilometer to have nests there. That's amazing. How do they do that in those little eggs? But they did it for a while, and then it collapsed back down. So this colony is also highly vulnerable to sea level rise. And my prediction for the future here would be that as this beach gets abandoned, it's already getting abandoned on these edges here where the storm surges come in. They're going to move up to this upper terrace again. And that lower beach is going to be completely submerged again in the future. But they'll have a place to go up to escape that. But that's not true in other colonies. There's other colonies here like Cape Hallett, which is also a low beach. Doesn't have an upper terrace. 100,000 birds there. They're probably going to have to find a new place and be forced out of there in the future. So what I'm doing now with my project over the next few years, I've got funding for the National Science Foundation. And we're doing more sampling at these active and abandoned colonies for these background isotopes and other information, trying to look at how this area is going to change in the future with climate change and where the penguins will go. And we're sampling prey remains and even marine phytoplankton and diatoms and algae out in the Ross Sea, because we want to know if these polynyas have different isotope signatures and communities of diatoms that might change in the future too. And again, this is a marine protected area, so we want to maintain that protected area. And so these analyses are helping to gather data to support that. The marine protected area, it's shown here in this diagram. There are certain areas that are research zones, there are certain areas off limits to fishing altogether. There's also areas where fishing is allowed. And so I just came back from a meeting 2 weeks ago where a number of us who work in the Ross Sea were looking at a 10-year review of this marine protected area that was formed in 2016. And it's the only marine protected area in the world that has an expiration date in 35 years where it has to be renewed. So we're hoping to collect enough data to show the importance of protecting this pristine ocean and the wildlife that occurs in there. Emperor penguins, Adelie penguins, minke whales, humpback whales, orcas, all these marine wildlife, and the seals too that come in there. So I've been also working with a tour ship, Heritage Expeditions out of New Zealand. It's a family-run business in New Zealand, and they are very supportive of research. So they let me come on their ship and collect samples while they go across the Ross Sea. And I've been able to collect marine phytoplankton samples from their ship and visit colonies that I couldn't get to otherwise with the National Science Foundation logistics. So it's a really good partnership, win-win for us because they get a researcher on board who can lecture to their passengers and involve them even in the research. And I get to go to new places and I get to go for free. So it's kind of nice. I go as unpaid staff and have my students sometimes come on too. And they do 2 cruises. That's all they can do in the Ross Sea, 2 28-day cruises per year, one in January and one in February. And they also visit some of the subantarctic islands, which is nice as well. And we worked out a way where we can collect phytoplankton samples at sea from the bridge. This is a former master's student of mine who helped me one year. And we throw this cylinder off the bridge while the ship is even moving. And we fill up this bucket with surface water. And then we take that water into a little lab we have, and we filter it through these glass filters and capture the diatoms. You can see that stain on there. Those are all marine diatoms. And then we can use that for stabilized isotope analysis and trace that back to the penguin colonies from the food chain. So we've got 4 years of data on that now. Here's in 2024, these dots show all the places we were able to collect these samples in the Ross Sea. No one has done this before, believe it or not. Most studies on phytoplankton have been done in the very local areas. So with this tour ship, we can sample all the way across from 71 degrees to 77 degrees latitude, which is amazing. And get all this information that I hope will support the MPA. And I've got a PhD student, Valerie, she's working on the penguin bones and the collagen, stable isotope analyses, and looking at that side of things. And then Tybee, she's a new student who did honors with me. She's really good at phytoplankton and is really into that. So she's going to be coming on the ship, I hope, this next year to help with that. And we'll gather more information for a 5th year in the Ross Sea. And so I think I'm running out of time. And so this, just to say that the future of the Adelies looks okay right now. They're increasing in some areas. They've declined in the peninsula with this less sea ice, but they're still okay in the East Antarctic. And I have an ornithology fund that I use if people want to make tax-free donations, tax-deductible donations, to this fund. It helps for the research and supporting students like those. And so because funding is getting more and more difficult these days from the government for some reason, a lot of cuts have been made. So working with the tour ship really helps on getting some of these data. So if you've got $100,000 sitting around and nothing to do with it, you can help out with the Ross Sea Marine Protected Area. And so I also wanted to mention I have a podcast of my class that I did. It's available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts called All About Antarctica. So if you wanted to see what my course is all about, I took the 19 lectures, I reduced them down to 8 to 12 minutes each for the highlights and put it ad-free on Spotify. So that's available too if you want to learn all about Antarctica through the course that I teach. And then just acknowledgements to my colleagues, COPI, Chad Lane, Stable Isotope Facility, National Science Foundation, Heritage Expeditions in New Zealand, and all the students that helped with this work. And I'll stop there for questions. Okay, good.
You said krill is related to ice cover. And I think of krill as eating phytoplankton and phytoplankton being like
Yeah. Yeah, the krill's eating phytoplankton, but it's related to sea ice too, because when the sea ice forms, it traps marine algae in it. And that algae stays in a dormant state through the winter. But in the spring, when the sun hits the sea ice, it acts like a mini greenhouse, and that algae actually grows in the ice, and it increases its biomass. And the krill graze underneath the ice where it's melting out. And so in a good heavy ice year, because it changes every year how much sea ice forms. In a heavy ice year means more food and more krill, and the chicks do better for the penguins. And in a low ice year, it's the opposite. So that's where the physical environment directly relates to the biological with this sea ice connection. But yeah, good point. Yes.
We never get to Antarctica. I get seasick and I'm not gonna think of both. But I am curious as to what a colony like that smells like.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
That's probably a smell I'm never going to get used to.
Yeah, the smell of the colony. What's that?
You can't bottle it and bring it back.
That was a question.
Oh, that, yeah. So the question was, what does the colony smell like? Yeah, they can be pretty powerful. The guano smell, it's not that bad. When I excavate into the old sediments, though, it can be really, in a fresh colony, it can be really bad because that's where all the organic remains are deteriorating and breaking down to the bacteria. So that smells pretty bad. But the guano itself, yeah, you get used to it. It's not so bad. And some of these sediments that are 4,000, 5,000 years old, they still have a faint odor of that guano in it. So it's pretty interesting.
So when you dig down, it smells worse?
In a fresh colony, yes. An active colony. In an old one, it doesn't. But that smell tends to dissipate away over time. So, but even thousands of years old, it's still there. But also, don't ever say never, because I used to get seasick all the time too. But there's a new drug, or I don't know if it's old or new, but it's a antihistamine called cyclazine that works wonders. Yeah, works great. Yes. What do they sound like? They have a raucous call. It's the Adeles. It's like and they get louder and louder. And then they have other little calls they do. They've got growls that they do, and when they have a threat coming towards them. But you can imagine that call times 300,000, and yeah, it's pretty loud. And how do they find each other? Then it's, somehow they can tell individual voices apart. Yeah.
Anybody try to study that, the voices?
Yes, studying the voices. Yes, with sonograms, you can do that, and you can break it down and see the note changes, and that must be what they're picking up on. Because even though birds only have one ear bone compared to our 3, they've got 10 times as many hair cells in their ear than we do, and that allows them to discern individual notes that we can't. And so when they call to each other back and forth at the mating colony, they are picking up on those differences they each have in their voice and memorizing it, find each other.
Making me wonder, they might even have different accents.
They could have different accents, yes, between the different colonies. That's a good point. Maybe that's another study to do. Yeah, very good. Yes. Are they scared of humans? Not all the time, no. If they've been handled, yes, they will run from you. So in study colonies where the birds have been handled to ban them or to pump their stomachs for food, to get a sample of their food for the year, then they'll run from you. But I've walked up to penguins at their nests and they won't move. In fact, they'll attack you with their flippers, and they'll just hit with their flippers, and it can really hurt because their flippers are hard and they can turn them sideways, and it's like taking a ruler sideways and going whack, 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 whack. So it can really bruise you up. Yes. Any other questions? Yeah, over here.
Like, how do they go about doing that?
They find new colonies. How do they find new colonies? When the chicks come back after about 2 years or 3 years old to start breeding themselves, they might hang around the place where they were hatched, but they may also go to an open beach somewhere down the coast, and they might like it. And so they may build a few nests there. And if it works, then they'll come back the next year and a few more will come with them. And eventually you've got a little colony that's developed. And if the food is good there, it'll keep growing. And so that's how a new colony starts. Yeah, like the one that first jumps in the water, you know, the others follow, and that's the same thing with the nest. So they'll spend the first, when they're 2 years old, they'll come back and they'll hang out at the colony. They'll come in a little bit late, and so they're not obviously going to be able to breed that year. But they'll play house. They'll build a lame little nest, and they'll maybe find a mate and protect that nest, and then do nothing. And then the next year they'll come in on time and actually try to breed, maybe lay an egg, maybe lose it, but finally they get it right the third time and start breeding every year. Back there.
Yeah. Now, let's, how far down was like the microbes?
How far down do the microbes remain active at a colony in the sediments? All the way down. Yeah, in fact, there are bacteria in Antarctica that actually are active in the ice at the South Pole, down to minus 20 or 30 degrees C. So there's some bacteria that have evolved with the Antarctic environment that can stay active, cold adapted bacteria. And so you get that in these colony sediments too, bacteria that's very specific for those areas, and also little invertebrates that are there too. There's mites that occur around some of these colonies. And so you can find things like that. And then rotifers and other things that live in the soil. So yeah, there's a lot of life down there you can't see. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
There's some other birds down there.
Yes.
That are predatory, and I imagine some are colonial.
Yes, right. There are some other birds down there. This table here, we've got the South Polar skua, which is one of the main predators at penguin colonies. So most skuas, they get a bad rap because they're always seen around stations trying to scavenge. They're seen around colonies taking eggs and small chicks. But most skuas are actually krill eaters and feed at sea and eat krill and silverfish. It's only when around the colonies where they'll take advantage of that. You also get giant petrels, which they're albatross size, and they can kill the chicks too at the colonies. But again, they're mostly scavengers of other things. And then there's in the ocean, there's orcas and leopard seals that will kill the adults coming in and out of the colonies. So you see that happening a lot too. And then the other flying birds, we've got the snow petrel there, which is also endemic to the Antarctic. Beautiful bird, all white, black-billed, and they nest on cliffs. And they're a tube nose petrel, and so they live a long time, 25 years or so. And they're just a fantastic bird to see around the ice. They like to fly around the pack ice, feed on krill and small invertebrates. And what else? Oh yeah.
There's the
A question.
Yeah.
So
snow
some
petrel.
of these are colonial, and they're nesting and staying located year after year. Is there opportunities to actually excavate those?
Yeah. Can you excavate other colonies of other birds? I've tried that because giant petrels will use pebbles and build up nests too. And but they spread out a lot, and they nest on rocky terraces that don't tend to accumulate the sediments. You find bones of things around the nest that might be like 20 years old or so, but nothing really old. Actually, snow petrels though, they have guano that round outside that form these big mounds, and they have been studied for paleoecology because they can go back 500 years. So they can give you another record too. And then of course the ice core record gives you a really good paleoclimate record as well down there. I've compared a lot of my data with the ice core record and how things have shifted with that. The last bird over there was a Wilson storm petrel, and Wilson storm petrels are found in pretty much every ocean on the planet, very abundant seabird. That little bird can live 30, 35 years or more. It's pretty amazing. And they nest in the Antarctic. So we can see them down there too. So there's a lot of seabirds you see going down to the Antarctic and then a lot that are nesting down there. It's pretty diverse area. Yes.
So I have a question. So one of the adults is take a predator at sea. Will the other adult put an kick or?
Yes, another good question. If an adult Adelie, a breeder, is killed, what happens to the other mate and the chick? And if it's if the chick is not independent yet, it's probably not going to survive. And the other adult, if it's waiting for the mate to return and give it a break on incubation or something, it's got to go feed or it'll die. So it just abandons it, has to. And so that happens sometimes too. And they can't relay an egg if they lose an egg because it's not enough time. If a chick is out of sync with the other chicks in the crush, it's a target. So if you got a little chick next to all these big chicks, skuas see that and they know it's an easy target and they'll get it. I've seen that happen. Yeah. All right, any other questions? Oh, Peter. Lifespan. Some have lived up to 18 to 20 years in the wild, but that's rare. Usually only about 12 to 15, maybe at the most, or even less, depending on the location and what they're going through. So yeah, it varies, but they don't live that long. In captivity, they'll live longer, over 20 years. But in the wild, maybe 12 on average. Yeah.
There might be questions on the chat.
Other questions?
I looked, I didn't see it.
I don't see any.
Yeah.
Early in the month, when across the record,
Yes, fossil record. Yes, there are some rocks in New Zealand where the fossil record of penguins has been exposed, and there's not a lot. There's been just a few remains found. Fortunately, they found these things when they did, but they've eroded out over time, and they found the fossils, and they were in pretty good shape, so they were able to study them and date them by the age of the rocks. And then the rest of the penguin record from there is really spotty. There's a really good record on Seymour Island in the Antarctic Peninsula dating to the Eocene. We're about 40 million years old. And there's about 10 or 15 species of penguins from that island's deposits. And some of those penguins were giants. There was like 6 feet tall penguins in the past. In the Miocene, there were also penguins that size in South America and Peru. And in Patagonia and Argentina, there's a really good record of the Miocene, and then another gap. And so we don't really have the Adelie penguin beyond 45,000 years where it was. We don't know. So there's gaps, and there's periods of where we find a lot of remains. So it's really interesting. But they're all about the same morphology. And how those 6-foot ones bred, that's a really good question for me. I've been wondering about that too, because if the emperor takes 8 months to breed and you double its size, and it has this bird probably had one big egg, then it must have taken like over a year to get through the breeding cycle. And where did it do this? And you wouldn't want to go near it, get whacked by that flipper either. So it must have been incredible, but to the one reason why it's safe and climate change. All right. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks again. So just a follow up about like in June, and I've been working in the Maoris for about 20 years and usually bird stuff, but the last few years we've been doing insect stuff. So Misty and Ann and I were wanting something on bugs, so we decided I would help orchestrate that. I have 2 young helpers who've been helping me with birds and insects. Kira spoke to us a year and a half ago, maybe about the bird stuff, but I'd asked her to talk a bit about the stuff we've been doing to document the insects, and it includes pollinators. And Grace works at the zoo. She was an intern here years ago. She's now at the zoo and does a pollinator study at some native plant gardens. I asked her to call in from Ashboro. She'll do part of it. And then the two of them agreed to help me do a field trip out there. So we might do a little bird banding in the morning for the early birds, and then we'll walk around the property for some of the bugs and go over to the zoo where there's a garden outside the actual entrance where we can have lunch and check out Grace's study area and look for more stuff. So that's the plan for next month. Watch our website for details. If you want to help out with program planning, next year we're looking for some help. You can talk to Ann or Missy or myself. And so we'll have the cupcakes, it looks like, or goldfish if you want some gold. If you're feeling like a penguin and you want to eat some krill, you can think of the goldfish back there as krill. And have some cupcakes. You can leave the chairs, table. They're having an event tomorrow. That's why the brown ones are out there. Apparently with a special request. So,
I've got some handouts here on if you are interested in, even small donations can really help for these students to get this work done. So feel free to take one of those if you're interested. And you have the address for my website.
and if you want to pet the bird, you can touch the bird, maybe hold the cupcake in one hand and the bird in the other. Try to keep them clean. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody online for coming. We'll see you next month. And yeah, enjoy a cupcake. Yeah.
Should I just move out?
Yeah.